if you feel the need to do something, and it's really important in your psyche, then do it. But at the same time, I would say don't burn your bridges to do it.
Hi, and welcome to A Class of Their Own podcast, revealing the human stories behind their name. We will hear honest and intimate reflections from our guests who, despite their circumstances, shape a world that reflects their unique visions of success. Join me, Mira Magacha, to learn from these inspirational people and take the first step to make your own change. On today's episode, we're joined by Sarah Pope. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm really good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Awesome.
We were introduced by the real Hackney Dave.
Yeah, Mr. Hackney.
The tradition on the podcast is to start with a very open question to say, who is Sarah?
That is a very broad question. Okay, so starting from the beginning, I was born in the UK, in the Midlands. I've lived in the UK mostly, but I've also lived some years in Spain. I spend most of my time now creating art. It was a bit of a windy journey to get to this point. I started off studying a degree in mathematics and then...
Maths to art.
Yeah, it's curious. For a long while, I kind of thought they were completely separate and, thought, what was the point of studying that? But now I see how completely related they are.
Amazing. And so if you were at a party or an event, how would you introduce yourself?
I'd probably ask them something about themselves. I think I'm a natural deflector.
We'll
until I feel kind of comfortable to kind of open up, if you know what I mean.
Okay. So who is Sarah in terms of what do you do for a living? How did you go from maths to the art world? I wanted to say drawing and making lips, but that's giving a little bit too much away already.
So now I'm a full-time artist, and that's how I make a living. Also, I'm very fortunate to do that. When initially I went to university, I studied a degree in mathematics. I finished that and realised, okay, this is not kind of what I want to pursue in my life, and I felt that like I had some creative thing that I wanted to pursue, but I didn't have any confidence in myself as a creative. So I went to live in Barcelona, lost a few years there.
Amazing. That's what one does. Can't do maths, still got some creativity. I'm going to go live in Barcelona.
And then at one point I had to kind of, think, okay, what am I going to do? And I began working in magazines as a graphic designer and art director. I was fortunate enough, I found a company who agreed to train me. And so, then I ended up working in that for a few years. And then I transitioned to the fashion world, and I began working as a shoe designer.
Shoe designer?
Yeah, in fashion.
So we started off
like,
in
is she
maths. I'm loving this. You started off with maths. Yeah. Was there any intention of doing something with maths in terms of...
I think not really. I think it was one of those situations where, like, at school, I was really academic. I found it really easy. My family is kind of like a mathsy family as well. My dad studied maths and computer sciences. My sister studied maths. So that was a very sort of well-known route within my family. And at my school, which was just, your average comprehensive school, there was nothing inspiring about the art classes or, so sort of nothing. I wasn't really exposed to anything that opened my eyes to what art is and what art could be. And so I guess I just, took the route of like, I'm really good at this. And there was something I really liked about maths as well. I liked the kind of, there's a certainty about it.
The binariness, it's either right
correct
or wrong.
Or it's wrong. And that kind of appealed to some kind of perfectionism in me. So yeah, it wasn't that I didn't like it, but it seemed like that was, the route to go down. But by the time I got to study it at degree level, I knew that wasn't it for me. But yeah, I still continue to finish the degree and sort of study that.
When you decided that maths wasn't it and that you were going to become an artist or go down that more creative side of life.
Yeah.
Was there any challenges from family?
My family have always been very supportive of whatever I wanted to do, but they were a bit like blindsided, if you know what I mean. Like my parents say to me now, like we just had no idea.
Where does this even come from?
No. To be fair, they've always supported whatever I've wanted to do, but they kind of it wasn't in their sort of
realm of experience.
So it
wasn't in their world to kind of recognise what that might look like.
Yeah, exactly.
So you went and worked in some magazines and then became a shoe designer.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the shoe designing. I love shoes.
Me too. I mean, I'd always since being young, I'd been very interested in clothes, fashion, especially shoes, makeup, basically how people kind of decorate themselves to express themselves. It was like a form of communication that it really kind of resonated with me. So at one point I kind of, and I'd always had this interest. I was always making clothes. I was always, sketching, and, that could have been a route for study, but, I didn't go down that route either. But at one point, the particular interest in shoes led me to start collecting vintage shoes and customizing them. So then I started doing these like champagne shoe parties.
Champagne shoe party. Okay, what is a champagne shoe party? I feel like I need this in my life.
Shoes and champagne, and get a load of people around who like both of those things, and sell some of the shoes. But it was never really sort of a money making business. It was just for fun. But while I was doing that I met a fashion designer who I really hit it off with, and he asked me to do the shoes for his collection in London Fashion Week. So that was just like amazing experience. And then I thought, oh my God, this is what I want to do. So I went to study at the London College of Fashion 1 year diploma at Cordwainers, the college, especially for making shoes, and sort of learned everything about shoes and how to make them and what's involved in, what you need to know in order to design them. And then I worked in shoe design after that.
Wow. All because of this one introduction to...
Largely, yeah. I mean, I'd kind of already started pursuing that interest, and, I was really enjoying going down and seeing where it would lead. But yeah, meeting this fashion designer was quite pivotal. And he also, I feel like he was very inspiring in that he was kind of somebody that made me believe in myself as a creative person. Because he was like extremely creative, and he, had the confidence in me to,
trust in you to go do it.
Yeah.
Where do you think that trust doesn't come in yourself? Why do you not have that trust?
That's a really, really good question. I don't know. I feel like as a kid, I don't recall anyone like at school or, in my peer group that kind of, how sometimes you meet someone and they are the inspiration that's kind of opened your eyes to something within yourself. And I feel like for whatever reason that didn't happen.
Is that in the art and creative space, or was that more as a child you didn't feel that?
Oh my God, I need to go and see my shrink.
No. What was it like growing up? Let's take you back.
Let's take me back. It was a very happy childhood.
Where did you grow up?
In the Midlands, yeah, like in a series of little villages and towns within the Midlands, kind of Stoke-on-Trent, Staffordshire, Cheshire. I'm never quite sure what the
county
area is. Yeah, it seemed to be close to all of those things.
Yeah.
yeah, like happy childhood. But I do remember, like, as I got to kind of a bit like teenage, I became, really, really unhappy. But I guess everybody does when they're a teenager, don't they? And I was like extremely introverted and shy. And I just felt, painfully shy and sort of unable to communicate freely. You know what I mean? Like really kind of closed in.
And what was that like in terms of the family? Because did you mention you've got some siblings?
I've got a sister. Yeah.
Older, younger?
She's a year older than me.
And are you similar to each other?
No, I don't think we are. We get on really well now. In fact, I just saw her at the weekend. But no, I think we're quite different. Yeah.
And so when you think back to those days when you were really shy and painfully shy is, I think, the word you used, did she notice?
I don't think. I mean, she was off doing
her
own
thing.
Yeah, and she was quite wild as a teenager. So, she was sort of very opposite to me, always getting into trouble and like, yeah.
When you think about pivotal moments in your life, what are some of the moments that come out to play in terms of creating you to be who you are today?
I'd say definitely, the meeting the fashion designer guy, that was quite like a sort of, and use time when you kind of open up, I guess, like with something. But I don't know. I can't think of any like sort of major. It's been like a series of events. Incremental, because I've done lots of things and been, had many different experiences, and it kind of all just kind of accumulates to sort of push you slightly in one direction or another. And then, yeah.
And when you think about the time when you had someone who really believed in your creative passion and creative style.
Yeah.
How did that help pivot you into a direction?
Well, I guess it just gave me confidence and it helped me sort of believe in my sort of intuition of what I wanted to do.
And it really has, because it's helped you do what you do, because you're not a shoe designer anymore either, because you've changed since then, haven't you?
Yeah. And that was kind of just sort of believing in my intuition, I suppose, because when I first started painting, I'm self-taught, I haven't studied, and I had no idea what it was going to turn into. I had a job shoe designing at the time, and I just got to a point where I felt like I loved shoes and I love design, but at the end of the day, it's like you're just designing a product, which is fine, and it can be really beautiful and interesting. But I just got to the point where I just felt like this isn't enough, and I felt like that there was more that I wanted to do that involved your being rather than just, creating something beautiful. And that's when I kind of felt compelled to paint. And I just started. I didn't know what it was going to lead to. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just in my kitchen throwing
paint on the walls.
Yeah, basically. And then I began this whole exploration into... the fashion designer was the first person that kind of made me sort of start getting interested in art. He was a big fan of Francis Bacon, and so I started, understanding his work and just like the sort of violence and emotion that he was able to put on canvas with paint was just like astounding to me. So, when I started experimenting and painting, I wanted to be able to sort of convey that, not like Francis Bacon, but like to convey some kind of emotion onto the canvas, which connects with people. It's a communication of something.
And did you have a message you were trying to share, or at this point was it just, I've got a calling to do something with paint and I'm just going to do something, I don't know what it is? Yeah. Or was there a message that you were trying to convey?
I think when I first started painting, it was very unconscious. I didn't know what I was doing or saying or why, but obviously tuning in to something in my unconscious, but I didn't know what it was. And I think the more you kind of create, and as you go along with that journey, then you sort of start to have understandings and realizations of what you're doing that you don't necessarily have when you're just starting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that as you've got further down the line?
It's definitely a need to communicate, which is curious.
I think that's amazing. Yeah, I think that's incredible though, that you found a medium that helps you.
Yeah, and I don't think it's not a coincidence that I've chosen the mouth as a subject.
Yeah.
Which I had no idea why I was doing that when I first started doing it. It's funny, isn't it? You can know something but not know it, like in your conscious mind. What
did you start out painting, and where and how did you start getting to the mouth?
So when I first started painting, I just knew that I was only interested in the face. Like I just knew that, which of course is because, it's where all your communication happens. Your character is there, your personality. So I started out just like playing around with portraits and sort of different kind of conceptual groups of portraits. But then really quite quickly, I isolated the mouth because I found that to be really expressive just in itself. So that was quite early on actually, and then for a while I was exploring the two things at the same time. And I remember I had a sort of DIY exhibition with a artist friend that I met who had the use of like some shop space in where we were living, and I had some lip paintings there, and it was just amazing how people connected with them so immediately, and that in itself was kind of really interesting to me and kind of made me think, that's interesting to explore more, because obviously it resonates with people.
Yeah. When you do your paintings of lips, are they different expressions of lips? So talk to me about the lips that you draw and what they say and what you're trying to communicate.
So each painting is based on like a real person. So my process is that like I'll invite my subject to my studio, and I'll do a photo shoot with that person for like an hour or 2 hours, where it's just me behind the camera and them in front of the camera, and just quite naturally we're talking about different things, and I'm just like taking like 5,000 photos
of just the lips,
like corrupted, and then like after, because then I've had this sort of intimate, like shared an hour or a couple of hours with this person, and then I will when I get home I'll look through all the photos and sort of decide what direction to go down for that person. So I see each painting is very, I kind of see it like as a lip portrait, as my contemporary version of portraiture, I suppose. Yeah. But I know the aesthetic of what I do is also very influenced by my kind of fashion experience. Like it's very attractive and beautiful, which is why it's, you have this very glossy. So that kind of plays into it as well. So I think there's lots of different things going on.
And is it mainly women or men as well that are the lip models? Lip models, I think, is the best word to call them. Subjects. There you go.
It's mainly women, but I also do men. I did a lip portrait of Benson Wilson recently, who is a baritone opera singer at the English National Opera. That was for a show last year. It can be men or women, or there's no rules that it has to be one or the other.
One. And when you have selected the lips in your painting, do your lips have a message in terms of what they're conveying from your point of view as an artist, of saying this is what the lips are saying as you're painting or drawing, and do you make that public?
Nothing like specific as a message. I guess it's more of a feeling. And I think I'm just thinking about the last subject that I painted. I felt that she was like a really joyful character, and so that's kind of what I wanted to convey in her portrait. So yeah, it can be like an emotion or a feeling. But I think I'm kind of not prescriptive about because when I'm painting, it's also still a little bit unconscious that I'm just sort of channeling this thing. And so I don't always know what someone else receives from that. And that's kind of, it's partly like none of my business. Like how
I portray the image of those lips.
Yeah,
the lips are amazing.
Thank you.
Just for people who haven't seen these.
Thank you. Go look.
The paintings are phenomenal, and absolutely you do go and check them out because they are absolutely gorgeous. This episode is brought to you by Play for Change. Play for Change brings together leadership coaching, expert facilitation, and builds communities. They help craft real connections, spark learning, and turn play into powerful experiments to enable better relationships with yourself and others around you. To find out more, go to playforchange.co.uk. Links are in the show notes below. When you talk about lips and communicating, and we've talked about it a little bit, which is you've struggled at certain points of being able to convey a message or understanding why, and you think it's quite ironic that you've concentrated on the lips. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
I haven't always felt like I can easily communicate. So I'm sure it's partly that. And I'm sure, like a lot of artists, that's why they do art, because it's communication in a different direction. But obviously I've chosen the mouth, so it's even more specific. But also just like the mouth is such a fundamental subject to our kind of humanness. We use our mouth to express ourselves. We eat, we breathe, we communicate like physically as well. Yeah. And also, it's partly responsible for being the mouth can be very attractive and kind of, a sort of sensual subject. Sexual. So I feel like there's just so much going on with the mouth. So yeah, that's also partly why I never get tired of this subject.
You'd think a mouth is a mouth.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah.
And they say so many different things. And right now I want to have the pictures all out here so I can kind of go, what do these say? But we don't have that. You said earlier that you went to school, London Fashion School, to learn about shoes. But with painting, you didn't. So it's all just come naturally. How does that happen? How do you know how to pick up a paintbrush and paint so beautifully?
Well, thank you, firstly. So there was a period of like experimentation. So I think, because at the beginning, like if you don't go to college to study or whatever, you don't know what's your medium. You don't know what you want to express. So you have to somehow like go on a bit of an exploration. And I know in that time I just went to like a million exhibitions and was, I'd go to the art bookshop and just be like reading, and because it was just this whole world like opening up, and it was fascinating to me, and it was like liberation. It really did feel like that. It felt like going into going to Tate or whatever and looking at things. It's just like it's like freedom in a way, like complete freedom to express yourself. So yeah, I felt like at that point I was just like a sponge, just like absorbing and like finding out and looking. And then there was the aspect of like trying out like lots of using oil paint to acrylic is very different because acrylics dry immediately, and then oil paints are like greasy. And for example, the paintings that I do now, which has taken a little time of development to kind of get to that aesthetic, if you know. So it's very much tied up with the nature of oil paints, because you can add oil to them, and then I get these really, really soft brushes, sometimes even makeup brushes, because they're so soft, and I almost just brush the canvas, so it almost gets this really airbrushed look. Like, people who haven't seen my paintings in real life, they often no idea that it's even a painting, because it could be like a digital image or an airbrushed image, like a airbrush. So there's lots of different things that you need to sort of discover about what direction you want to go in, and that takes a little bit of time, and especially if you haven't got somebody saying to you, okay, do this now and do this now
and try this and use this technique. But how do you learn that, apart from reading? And you've clearly experimented, you've got lots of exhibitions out and about. How do you do that when you don't have either the necessary network or you haven't studied it? How do you go about learning how to do that?
It's been like a real organic thing for me, and I feel quite lucky in that way, because it really has happened very organically. I mean, obviously, like in the initial stages, I had this internal drive to do the thing, but then out in the world, it's just been received really well. And then someone will approach me from over here, and then that, I've over the years, I've received so many invitations and offers to work with someone or do a thing, or so
it's not just luck, though.
I don't think it is just luck.
No, there's definitely talent there, so that's not to be questioned.
But I also know I have this really strong internal drive. I'm so motivated. I get up 7:30, start working 9. I love this thing, and maybe that's what people respond to, and
the energy.
Maybe it's
the
that
energy that you're putting out the good vibes in the world.
Hopefully, I hope so.
So you've just triggered a question, which is, what does a typical day look like for you?
I don't really have typical days. Each one is different.
Of course it is. You're an artist. You're creative.
It depends what's going on. So say, for example, last year, at the end of the year, I was having a solo show with a whole new body of work. So I'd set myself this mission to create 12 new artworks, which is a lot in the time that I had. So there was a period of maybe 6 months, or more than that, but definitely 6 months intensely, where I was in my studio every day painting. But that's not how it always is. So there might be other times where I'm doing more stuff like this, or if I'm working on a new print edition with one of my galleries, then I'll be going into the gallery, and we'll be sort of doing proofing and stuff like that. And then there's just visiting, seeing my galleries and all the kind of logisticsy stuff as well, doing an exhibition and moving artwork around. In the summer, I had to go to Ibiza for the opening.
Such a hard life this sounds like. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, partly why I like it as well, because I think I get bored quite easily with in one way I like routine, but in another way I don't. I've worked for many years in companies, and having to go to a place, sit in a desk and
draw and get creative, and
it just used to do my head in.
How long does it typically take to do one?
So from start to finish can take 2 months, maybe 3. But I won't be working on that solidly.
Yeah.
So the time, but then, for example, I did a piece last year which was embellished with like 15,000 crystals.
15,000 crystals.
Yeah. So that one took a little bit longer.
Just picking up little crystals would have taken about 5 hours per one and getting it positioned in exactly the right place.
Yeah. I mean, I love doing the crystal pieces, but the first piece I ever did was much smaller. But thankfully, in between doing that piece and doing my later pieces, which are much bigger with like 15,000 crystals, I met in my studios. There's like 12 studios with all people doing various wildly different things.
Yeah.
And at one point there was a lady who was working on, I think, RuPaul's Drag Race or something.
Right.
And so she was a crystal expert.
Crystal queen, clearly.
And she taught me all these little hacks.
Oh, amazing.
So it allowed me to, because the piece that I did with the 15,000 crystals, if I was doing it one by one, which is how I was doing it in the beginning, it would have taken me like 3 years. But, there are little hacks you can...
3 years?
Huh?
3 years. Wow. I'm just impressed at how much dedication and effort goes into creating something that is spectacular, but 3 years.
Oh, no, if you were doing it one by one, it didn't take me 3 years.
No.
It took me 4 or 5 months from start to finish. But I don't know, it's funny, like with the crystal piece, for example, I have this like ultra focus button where I just go into this zone and I can be in that for hours and hours just doing a thing. I don't know, I don't know if that's normal or whether it's a sort of superpower.
I'd call it your superpower.
Yeah.
Do you have, again, coming back to your 6-month block, did you have the equivalent of a writer's block or artist block where it just wasn't working on particular days or weeks where you just couldn't get the colour out? Because currently I'm trying to write a book.
Okay.
And my goodness, it's just painful at certain points.
Yeah, I've heard that's
Do
really
you
hard.
have similar?
Yes, sometimes if I want to do something, which is like slightly different or has a different aesthetic that I'm trying to achieve, and it's just not working. Like sometimes I think I'm quite good at being my own editor and understanding it's like as much as I want this to work, it's not working. So sometimes I then just have to step away. And then your brain is like amazing, isn't it? Because suddenly just something will pop into your mind.
It resets.
Like a different way will just come out of like nowhere. And then usually get there in the end, but it might not be like the way that I
intended or thought it
was
would
trying
be
in the beginning.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I started doing meditation, transcendental meditation, and I find that can really help. Like sometimes something that a problem that I've been struggling with, I'll be doing the meditation, the answer will just pop in while I'm meditating.
So you seem, again, I'm going to use a typical artist example, you seem relatively calm and stable and all of the things that don't go with artists. So people talk about so if I go back to my childhood as an example, and I come from a very non-artist family.
Yeah.
But you'll never make money as an artist. You can't possibly do that. All of those stereotypical views come out. But you've made it.
Yeah.
And it's working for you. Completely unintentionally. Is that the trick? Is that the advice? Do it unintentionally.
Maybe. Although, I think I do have the benefit of having worked in businesses, and I understand the value of basically just sort of doing what you say because when you work with galleries, they're businesses, and if you're going to do a show, I think galleries on the whole, they quite like working with me because I deliver. Like if I say that I'm going to do something, then I do it. So I think maybe that comes from working in
having a deadline and
just understanding that has to happen. Whereas I think, I don't know, maybe some artists, if they've never worked in that scenario, then they don't see it as so important. I don't know.
I'm an artist and therefore I'll get to it when I get to it, when the inspiration comes, and it'll be finished when it's finished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having said that, I mean, you said that I'm very calm and on the exterior. Inside,
So
I have this like savage, like internal critic.
So what's going on the inside?
Anxious.
So tell me more about that.
It's like, I guess it's something that I sort of constantly sort of struggle with. And again, meditation, I think, has helped a lot with that, because it just makes you understand how your brain works much better. And that, like, okay, even though I know my mind is doing this, I can just sort of slightly be apart from that and know it's going on, but, you know, not kind of, what's the word, like get turmoiled in with it, like
drawn into the negativity.
Yeah, I think it's kind of helped with that. But yeah, I don't know. I've always had this sort of like awful inner judge.
Given that your work is amazing and you've got so much external, what's the word I'm looking for? Not kudos. Validation, that's the word.
Yeah.
You've got kudos, you've got validation. And it is incredible, paintings and artwork. What would help your internal voice, apart from meditation? Because you've said you found something that works.
Well, I've had some counselling as well, not, you know, for thing, but that definitely did help, because CBT can give you very definite like techniques to kind of help, which is meditation is one of them. But I don't know. I wonder if it will ever go away. I'm not sure, you know, completely.
Do you want it to go away?
I don't. I would like it to go away a bit more. I mean, I'm just thinking, okay, do you need that internal critic for, like, you know, making good artwork? You definitely need to be able to objectively criticize your work.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe more of the irrational stuff probably could do without it, you know.
And did you say that you've had that since being younger, or is that a thing that's come from the artwork?
Always had it, yeah.
But you were super academic and super bright.
No, there's no like there's no reason or logic.
Doesn't always require logic.
No.
What advice would you give anybody who's thinking about not just becoming an artist or taking up something creative, but doing something completely different or seemingly different at some point in life, that they studied a certain way, they thought they were going to do this, and actually they've gone full circle and doing something completely different?
What if they were about to do it? What advice? I'd say, like, go for it. Absolutely go for it. If you feel the need to do something, you know, and it's really important in your psyche, then do it. But at the same time, I would say don't burn your bridges to do it. Like, for example, like when I started painting, I didn't sort of turn around and say, right, this is going to like pay for my life now, and put all that pressure on the thing. I think for a long while, you have to support the thing that you want to do. So, like, for example, so I got made redundant from a shoe job, which was great because it gave me like a little chunk of time where I really started experimenting with painting. But then, of course, that was only like a few months' salary or something. So then I had to start working again. And I couldn't, I felt really adamant that I needed to give myself time to keep doing this thing. So I knew that I couldn't get a full-time job because it's harder, isn't it? You know, so I was adamant that I wanted to find part-time work, but nobody was offering part-time shoe work because they all want you to work in house. And so it was like, okay, this is not happening for now, at least. So I ended up doing private maths tuition for a while, which
how it all connects.
Yeah, finally I used that maths degree. Mum, it was worth it. So, which, you know, I'm absolutely not a teacher, and, you know, it wasn't my dream thing to do, but I did it because I wanted to support this thing. And then eventually I got some part-time shoe work, and then, you know, I was working part-time for a while. So yeah, do the thing, but make sure you support it in some way. So you don't, it's just like not putting too much pressure, you know, so it stays light and energetic and sort of fresh.
Some would argue that if you're going to start, let's call it a hobby, for example, into a real business or a real dream, you have to put all that pressure on. You have to put all your eggs in one basket. But actually, you've done something slightly different, which is, I'm going to do this light touch. I'm not going to apply the pressure on myself to see if, one, you want to do it. Because I assume at this point you were still experimenting to see if this was something that you wanted to go into and love.
Yeah.
So I love that.
It's funny, though. Like, I didn't even think about it in terms of like, oh, do I want this to be like my career? Like, I need to try it out to see if I didn't even think that far. It was just like, I need to do this thing. That was it.
How long have you been doing art, painting?
I think 12 years, maybe. 12 years.
And how long before you had your first exhibition or felt like you'd made some real good, positive inroads into it?
So I think maybe I was kind of experimenting for about a year. And then I did this DIY show. And then quite quickly after that, I met Dario from Jealous Gallery. And I'd actually popped in there when the Jealous was still in Crouch End. I popped in to get some prints done because I had some friends who lived down the road. I was like, oh, that looks like a really great place. So I popped in there, and Dario really liked one of my images. So he asked me if I wanted to publish it with Jealous Gallery. And I feel like that was kind of like the beginning, because obviously Jealous Gallery is so respected and so everybody knows Jealous Gallery. So all these other galleries would see my work there and start selling my work sort of via Jealous. So I feel like that was a bit of a, like you were saying before, a bit of a turning point moment. Yeah.
A serendipitous moment where it was by accident that you walked in.
Yeah.
What is success for you as an artist?
Connection.
Tell me more.
So I feel like if people are connecting with my art, then that's success for me.
You said you were always sketching, you were always into design. And when you compare that from a young age of feeling like you wanted to do that versus I'm doing maths, was there a different emotional connection to them both, even at that young age?
Yeah, I think there's probably different feelings in doing either one. But I think, like, I have both in me, you know, that kind of, I know I do have a big, like, perfectionist side. And, you know, look at my art now, that definitely, you know, they are very, like, perfect, even though sometimes perfect, I go in the opposite direction when I'm just, like, throwing paint. But so that obviously appealed to me on the maths front.
Yeah.
No, there was something, like, beautiful about maths as well. I think it's just like maths is in everything. It's like what somebody said is the language of the universe.
It is. It really is. Like, you can't get away from maths in any day, everyday world.
Yeah.
In what we do. If there was one thing that you wish you'd done earlier or later, what would that be?
I mean, I sometimes think, what would it have been like if I'd gone to art school? Like, what would that have, like, looked like? I don't ever dwell on it. Yeah. But sometimes I do think, oh, I wonder if, because sometimes, from what people say, I don't know if art school is helpful or actually not helpful.
Because it might also box you in and put you into this little paradigm of do it like this.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's just, I guess, a little thought experiment, but I don't really sort of lose sleep over.
So we started this conversation with who is Sarah?
Yeah.
I want to take us 360 degrees back to that and see if there's anything you would add, change or alter without deflecting it back to me.
I can't remember. What did I say in the beginning? Yeah, I mean, I sort of sketched you out a little, how my little journey to be creating art. But I fleshed that out.
An incredible artist. And do you see lips being your future?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I think, I'm excited by some other new directions I can take it in. Specifically, I'm really interested in all the sort of latest developments in tech. I'm so fascinated by all of that. So yeah, I think the time that we're living in now is mind blowing, and I'm just trying to get my head around all the even in the last 2 years, the sort of developments of what's now happening and available with AI and tech. So yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. If you enjoyed that conversation, please share A Class of Their Own podcast with your friends and family. Subscribe, follow and like. It really helps us continue to grow. Keep being you through connection, learning and play. You are a class of your own.